Carving Up is back tonight with a loaded Monday show after a weekend of preseason football. Shedeur Sanders, the story of the weekend, playing really well in his preseason debut for the Cleveland Browns. What does it mean for his future as the potential quarterback for the Browns? Where does it stand among the depth chart in Cleveland with Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett, Tyler Huntley, Joe Flacco? Everybody's trying to compete for that job in Cleveland. Talk about that to start the show. I got to admit, really concerned with what I'm seeing from the Cincinnati Bengals, and I have no reason to believe that this season will be any different than last season for them. Talk about that. 30 minutes into the show, RJ Ochoa, he covers the Dallas Cowboys, manager and editor-in-chief for Blogging the Boys at SB Nation. He'll be joining to talk about Micah Parsons' contract situation, as well as what he's seeing from Brian Schottenheimer, the new coach, George Pickens, what the outlook for the Dallas Cowboys should be. Excited to talk to him in a half hour. Also get to Jaxson Dart, his rookie debut, how quickly he could get on the field for the Giants. And at the end of the show, wearing my Team USA Steph Curry jersey. 1 year since Steph helped deliver the gold for Team USA. Carving Up is loaded, baby. Let's drop the beat, baby. Here we go. And we're rolling. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up right here on YouTube as well as on X. I am excited to be here. I'm Bryson Carver. This is not a live show. I almost hesitated, or I did hesitate, I guess, to say Carving It Up live. This is a pre-recorded show, and as I always say, for any pre-recorded show, if there's anything in the world of sports that has happened between the time that I'm recording, which is about 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the time that it's airing, which is 6.5 hours from now, if there's anything that's happened in between now and then, I'm aware of it. Just not the time you're watching me. We got a loaded show. You already heard the rundown. RJ Ochoa is going to be joining us in about 30 minutes. He was on the show last year in September. Great dude. Does a great job covering the Dallas Cowboys. Excited to hear his thoughts and his take and what he is hearing recently regarding Micah Parsons, the contract situation in Dallas. It's been now 10 days since the trade request from Dallas and Jerry Jones and all of it. This Micah versus Jerry circus. Talked to him about that, as well as about Brian Schottenheimer, Dak Prescott, the Cowboys season outlook. Very excited about that. Preseason football, Jaxson Dart, he looked really good in his debut against the Buffalo Bills. When could he get in the field this season? I think sooner than folks think. Cincinnati Bengals, get to them in about 10-15 minutes. I'm not liking what I'm seeing at all from that defense. I will say, as a Steelers fan, I'm not like devastated about it. But if I were a Bengals fan, which I'm not, I would not feel the greatest about it. No question about it. And again, wearing the Team USA jersey because Steph Curry 1 year ago yesterday delivered the gold for the United States of America. And I want to sort of recap that and talk about Steph and what he's done in the biggest game. So talk about that later on in today's show. But first, Shedeur Sanders. Have a day, buddy. So he gets to start on Friday night against the Carolina Panthers. Now, again, this is preseason. Some of these concepts are not terribly exotic. Like, this is a pretty vanilla game plan on the part of both teams, on the Browns coaching staff, on the Panthers coaching staff. But we talked about this on Wednesday's show, most recently when we were here. My take was, you probably won't, if you're Shedeur Sanders, you probably won't get a better opportunity than this, in the sense of separating yourself from the competition to, at worst case scenario, get the backup job in Cleveland. And I think that's realistically what Shedeur should be aiming for. Joe Flacco is 40 years old. He's going to be the starter. He knows the system. He helped the Browns get to the playoffs 2 years ago. He's the bridge guy, right? Like, he's not the long-term starter. We know this, but he's a guy who can come in, knows the system, and it's not going to be a disaster. He's not going to, you can't ruin Joe Flacco. He's already had a solid NFL career. But Dillon Gabriel, Kenny Pickett, Shedeur Sanders, to a degree, Tyler Huntley, who just got in the building less than a week ago, they're competing for that number 2 job. But Dillon Gabriel's got a hamstring issue. Kenny Pickett's got issues with his arm. So neither are healthy. Joe Flacco was never going to play. Shedeur was going to get a lot of playing time, and he made the most of it. We can show you the numbers. 138 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, completed 60% of his passes, which isn't great. Needs to, be a little more efficient, but it's his first start. Had a pass rating of 106.8, and you see down there he was taken out with 3:55 left in the third quarter. And I thought early on, when it came to Shedeur, and going back to the draft process, I was not of the belief that I thought Cam Ward was the best QB in the class. I thought Cam Ward certainly a better arm talent than Shedeur. I think Cam, underratedly so, if you watched Miami and if you watched Colorado. Shedeur certainly did not have a good O-line, and we'll touch on that. But Cam Ward did not have a great O-line at Miami either. I'm actually not terribly high on the Hurricanes this season. I think Carson Beck is going to be asked to do some Cam Ward stuff, and I don't think Carson Beck, with the injury, is going to do that. But that's a different discussion for a different college football day. I liked Cam Ward more as a prospect and more as a franchise quarterback, but I like Shedeur number 2 right behind them, behind him. It wasn't a terribly stacked quarterback class. We'll talk about Jaxson Dart later in the show in about 45 minutes. But I thought accuracy was there. I thought he moved well. Certainly not nearly as athletic as his dad, but his dad's one of the greatest athletes ever. Like it's the genes didn't necessarily translate to Shedeur, but he can still move, right? We understand what he's able to do at Colorado, helping take over a Colorado team that had won one game in 2022, lost by an average margin of 29 points per game, got him to 4 wins, okay, still better than what they were, and then got him to a bowl game against BYU a season ago. So, and broke a lot of records at Colorado. So he was an excellent college quarterback. He was successful at Jackson State. And there was a lot of he didn't handle the draft process terribly well, and maybe his dad didn't help his case, and the people got really worked up about the legendary draft room and all of the above. And he falls to the 5th round to the Cleveland Browns, who had already taken Dillon Gabriel. I thought it was absurd that he fell as low as he did. My take was, listen, Shedeur has lived the NFL life to a certain degree, at least as much as you can in college football. A lot of scrutiny. B, he's not playing with a great offensive line. C, he's not playing with the most talented roster in his conference in the Big 12. That was Arizona State. That was, Iowa State was really talented last year. Like Colorado was talented, not to the level of some of the top contenders in the Big 12. So this isn't an Ohio State situation or a Clemson or a Georgia where, okay, you're used to just rolling out there every single Saturday, and I've just got better players than you do. That was not the case for Shedeur Sanders week in and week out at Colorado. And so I thought he had franchise quarterback potential. I don't love him being in Cleveland because outside of the Jets, there really is no worse place for a rookie quarterback to go than the Cleveland Browns. With that being said, I see no reason whatsoever, based on what we saw in the preseason game. And again, the Browns play again on Saturday, I believe. Their next preseason game, I think, is on Saturday. And so you obviously he'll get some run in that game, see what he does there. But I certainly don't want to overreact in the sense, Cleveland sports radio is just, hey, listen, Cleveland's a desperate sports city. That goes without saying. They've got the next, Otto Graham on their roster right now in Shedeur Sanders. They are freaking out this week. We've got our guy. Slow down. But I also don't think it's nothing. He moved well. He was accurate. The second touchdown throw, I thought, was toward the end of the first half, excellent. Led a long drive in order to get there. Accuracy, early, he was a little erratic. One pass kind of high, okay, maybe a little nervous, a little jittery, settled into the game more, and I thought was excellent. So give kudos to him. He was accurate, moved well. Arm strength was better than I anticipated. Again, there was a couple of plays where he was trying to extend with the Cleveland Browns offensive line struggling and Carolina getting pressure right off the bat, sending blitzes at Shedeur, and he's trying to make a play like he did at Colorado, running all over the place, breaking outside of the pocket. That's going to have to be eliminated from his game. But at the end of the day, that's something you can coach out of a player. But if you look at the Browns' schedule, and this to me is the story, because Dillon Gabriel's small and injured. Kenny Pickett, I'm a Steelers fan, I know, isn't very good at football. Heck, we saw him in some action with the Philadelphia Eagles last season. He wasn't good with that roster, right? The Jalen Hurts haters say anybody can work in that offense. Kenny Pickett couldn't. So, and again, Tyler Huntley just got there. He might end up getting moved before this is all said and done. He might be back at third string, whatever the case may be. And we know Flacco's going to be the week 1 starter. But if you look at Cleveland's schedule, early on it's brutal. So you start with the Cincinnati Bengals, who don't have a good defense. We'll talk about them in a few minutes. But we know what Joe Burrow in that team, it's going to be a track meet. Cincinnati should win that game. You go to Baltimore. Talk about a defensive culture. That's Baltimore. Home against Green Bay, they could have a good defense. At Detroit, an improved defense. Then go to London to play the Minnesota Vikings. That's a Brian Flores defense. You don't want Shedeur out there for that. Then you go to Pittsburgh. You darn sure don't want Shedeur against a Mike Tomlin defense and TJ Watt and the crew. I think it's on the board because we know the Browns are going to be a bad football team this year. They're one of the worst teams in football, one of the worst rosters in the NFL. I think week 7 against the Miami Dolphins, we could see Shedeur Sanders, if not start, get some action. Maybe come in mid to late third quarter, see what he has from there. And then after that, Patriots, which, has improved. They've improved drastically from last year. Mike Vrabel's a defensive guy, and the Patriots have always been a defensive culture. It's on the road, so that could be tough. At the Jets, it's Aaron Glenn, but it is the Jets. At the Raiders, home for the Ravens, at the Raiders, Pete Carroll. There's some good defenses down the stretch for the Browns to face and for Shedeur to face, but sitting for a while, Joe Flacco's terrible as this sounds. Let Joe take the hits. early on in the season. Let Joe be in there when the Browns season goes to hell right off the bat. And then Shedeur comes in. Because here's the really underrated part that no one's talking about with the Cleveland Browns. The Travis Hunter trade. Remember where they traded the second overall pick to Jacksonville? Jaguars took Travis Hunter. We think the Browns will be bad next year, so they're going to get a high pick. Well, if the Jags are mediocre to bad, which is very much on the board, it's the Jags for crying out loud, they could have another great first-round pick. So the Browns could be in a position where in a quarterback class next year that looks really, really interesting, led by potentially Arch Manning. I know Archie Manning said that Arch isn't going to go to the draft. Arch is going to go to the draft if he balls out this season. There's no question about it. Arch Manning and the kid at Penn State, like Cade Klubnik at Clemson, like that, it's a good quarterback class. You might want to get one of those guys. But if Shedeur can play, maybe we can parlay those picks into future picks, maybe into a couple second rounders, use the draft capital that we have to build a roster. We've got a good coach in Kevin Stefanski, but simply put, outside of Myles Garrett, not very good. This is not a very good football team. It goes without saying. So let's see what the kid has. Again, he's got a smart offensive coach in Kevin Stefanski, decent weapons, run game, all of it. You got a guy I love from the University of Tennessee, Dylan Sampson. Let me tell you something. Dylan Sampson can run the football effectively. So listen, I think Shedeur, it could be really, really good in this system, at least by rookie quarterback standards. And I think we could see him as early as week 7. So, again, you don't want to overreact to what you saw because it is preseason, because the concepts aren't exotic, because the Panthers, Dave Canales and that coaching staff, they're not going to throw a lot at Shedeur, at anybody in the preseason. You don't want to show your hand right off the bat. At the same time, the opportunity presented itself for Shedeur. Could he have asked for a better result? I know he was in some ways kind of self-critical, and he said, I know my dad's watching, and there's going to be some stuff to correct. Listen, that's what you want to hear from a quarterback. Yeah, I played well, but I missed some throws. The 4th down and 1 could have been better executed. Like all of those different things. Like you want to hear that from Shedeur. Everything coming out of Cleveland has said he's been a model citizen. The speeding ticket, I ripped him on the show for it, but I said there's a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL that have had off-field issues. Dak Prescott had a DUI. Lamar Jackson got in trouble for speeding. Eli Manning got in trouble early in his college career. Like it's not a death sentence. You can improve, you can mature, you can get better. And so I know the reports coming out of Cleveland as of the time of this recording says that Shedeur is still the 4th-string quarterback. I still have a hard time believing that, especially if he continues to play this well in the preseason. So I don't know how you couldn't have liked what you saw. Did he light the world on fire? No. Again, it's preseason for a rookie quarterback, but certainly didn't look like a 5th-rounder, to put it mildly. So shout out to Shedeur Sanders. Really, that's the number one thing to me that I was very pleased seeing with Shedeur. And then we'll move on to another AFC North team, the Cincinnati Bengals. The thing that I was really like, that's good news. He didn't look rushed. He looked poised. He didn't seem to be, playing, not playing from behind in the sense of the scoreboard, but playing from behind in terms of the game's moving too quickly for him. And again, obviously, the NFL is way faster than college football. And certainly regular season football is significantly faster and more talent. There's more talented players out there than in the preseason. With that said, though, like I said, Colorado, he dealt with the bad O-line. He didn't always have the most talented roster at Colorado. He helped turn around a program along with his dad and Travis Hunter and others that was as irrelevant can be in Division I college football, certainly in, at the time, Power 5 college football. So he's used to the scrutiny. He's used to all of those things, being Deion Sanders' son. So a lot of this is not that big of an adjustment for him. And so he has that advantage. Listen, in a lot of cases, the kids of athletes do just have a natural advantage, not just from a genetic standpoint, but from I've seen the bright lights. I've been maybe not necessarily on the field for it, but Patrick Mahomes' dad played baseball. Like he's used to seeing those different things. Steph Curry's dad, Del Curry, was a great shooter. Steph was on the court doing shoot-arounds. Like it is an advantage. Certainly, you could say the same thing for Shedeur Sanders. So, love what I saw, and I think if he continues to build off of this, I see no reason whatsoever why he couldn't be the backup quarterback come week 1 for the Cleveland Browns. And I think week 7, Miami Dolphins, not exactly a team known for having a great defense. You imagine the Browns season will be over by that point, by mid-October. See what the kid has, because we have 2 first-round picks next year. One of which is ours, and we don't think we're going to be very good. And the Jaguars, I don't know, it's the Jaguars. They known for being good that good lately. If they're bad, holy crap, we may have 2 top 10, top 12 picks in a great quarterback class. We need to see what this kid has as soon as possible. And I think we could see that from Shedeur Sanders. So I like what I saw from him against the Carolina Panthers. And again, you got to be careful with preseason. Like, you don't want to overreact. I've said often on the show that the two biggest overreaction Mondays of the year are the Monday after week 1, which is coming up in less than a month, and then the Monday after the Super Bowl. Like, that's when everyone has the definitive opinion. And so in preseason football with rookies doesn't go quite to that extreme. But again, you imagine, I haven't listened to Cleveland sports radio. I don't want to, put myself through that. But you have to imagine oh my gosh, this kid is, and Cleveland's been starved of great quarterback play for a long time. So you understand that. It's, again, if you ask Shedeur Sanders, if you told Shedeur Sanders before this football game, this is how it's going to play out, given the opportunity with two of the guys you're competing with who are injured right now, this is how it's going to play out for you. First preseason start, I think he would have taken it. He got stronger as the game went on. He got more comfortable as the game went on. Says a lot about the kid. So kudos to Shedeur and kudos to the Browns. I think we're going to see him on the field at some point mid-October if he continues this trajectory. In the AFC North, though, we're staying in the division. The Cincinnati Bengals. So not a great showing. This game happened on Thursday, so this was nearly a week ago, but it was one of the more fascinating preseason games for me for a couple of reasons. Number one, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase played. I think a lot of that from the Bengals coaching staff and whatnot is, man, we keep getting off to slow starts. We keep kind of putting ourselves behind the 8 ball. We were able to recover from that in 2021 and 22. Got to Super Bowl in 21, got to AFC title game in 22. But 23, Burrow was hurt in the preseason. The season was kind of doomed from the jump. And then last year, lost to the Patriots, lost to the Chiefs, lost to Washington, we're 0-3, and they were playing catch up the whole time. They started 4-8. Like, that's where the Cincinnati Bengals were not too long ago. Don't know of a single person that was like, the reason the Bengals went 9-8, reason they missed the playoffs again, Joe Burrow just didn't do enough. Yeah, Jamar Chase didn't do it for me. T. Higgins, not great. Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase literally had the best seasons of their career. And it didn't matter because the Cincinnati Bengals last season with Lou Anarumo as the defensive coordinator, 26 in points and 25th in yards allowed. They were having to win shootouts. They were having to score into the 40s. Remember the 2 games against Baltimore where Burrow was unreal in both, and they still lost because they could not stop Lamar Jackson. Most people can't stop Lamar Jackson, but the Bengals in particular just got absolutely torched by Lamar. It's a small sample size, and people may think I'm overreacting. But Al Golden, new defensive coordinator, again, we're only one preseason game in, so we got to see how this defense continues to get better. And I get it. B.J. Hill didn't play. Who else? Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill, most notably Trey Hendrickson, who's looking for a new contract, one of the premier pass rushers in football. He didn't play. Outside of that, the whole first-team defense for the Cincinnati Bengals suited up against the Philadelphia Eagles with no Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, the offensive line, the superstars in the offensive line, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, all the superstars for that Philadelphia offense did not see the field. And the Bengals got absolutely torched, gave up 10 points. Tanner McKee, who's a nice, backup quarterback, looked like Jalen Hurts. Looked like Jalen Hurts against the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl back in February. He just torched them. And again, people might say, the Bengals were missing some of their starters. The Eagles are missing all of their starters. Like that says a lot. And again, I don't know if it's a schematics thing. I don't, honestly, hand to God, I don't think Lou Anarumo was the problem last year. I think the fact that the Bengals have been notoriously cheap, notoriously just letting guys go, letting really important, guys go in free agency, safeties and pass rushers. Hubbard retired. Like, all of these guys have left, and now it's a pretty bare cupboard, and they don't draft particularly well on that side of the football. This is why I ripped Cincinnati back when I was in Disney World in March when they paid Jamar Chase. You paid Jamar Chase. He's probably the second best receiver in football to his old college teammate, Justin Jefferson. You paid Jamar Chase. But after that, T. Higgins is awesome. T. Higgins could be the number 1 receiver on half the league. But you had T. Higgins, who was awesome. Yeah, Jamar Chase, who was awesome. Joe Burrow was dealing. 9 wins because you couldn't get a stop when it mattered most. Russell Wilson cooked Cincinnati's defense last year. Feels like everybody did. Again, they were having to win shootouts against the likes of a Pittsburgh Steelers or a Dallas Cowboys with Cooper Rush. Like, they were Tennessee. They were having to just scratch and claw just to stay in these games with Burrow, Chase, and Higgins playing A+ football. So I would have let Higgins walk, re-sign Trey Hendrickson, one of the most important positions on the field, pass rusher, and then try and draft well defensively. Now, again, it is one preseason game. I understand, but this optimism, listen, we've known, or at least it's been conventional wisdom, and understandably so for years, the last, I'd say 3-4 years or so, that the AFC North, toughest division in football. Now, I think that last year the NFC North overtook it, and I think the NFC North today still is the toughest division in the NFL. I said at the show last week, and I was talking about the Bears. If you told me any one of the 4 teams in the NFC North won the division, I would not be surprised, just because you could make a case for all of them. Obviously, you cannot make the case for the Cleveland Browns. They're terrible. We just talked about them. Pittsburgh, I'm a Steelers fan, but a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, 2 years removed from Achilles, 4 years removed from being good, bad O-line, offensively tone-deaf coaching staff. That's not winning the division. Baltimore's clear-cut the best roster in the division, maybe the best roster in football along with Philadelphia. I don't understand the Bengals may make the playoffs. I may pick them to get in. I do not understand this, man. It could be dangerous next year. Remember at the end of last season? The Bills do not want to see the Bengals in the first round. Like, boy, they better hope Denver gets in. And to the Buffalo Bills' credit, they blew out Denver, as they should. As if Josh Allen, the MVP of the league, would not have absolutely cooked at home, would not have absolutely cooked that Cincinnati defense. As if the Bengals had somehow won that football game because the Bills had a bad defense last year, that they would not have been dead on arrival against the Kansas City Chiefs, who have an excellent defense. And, by the way, the best quarterback in the world, Patrick Mahomes. What has changed? Coaching staff's the same. Zach Taylor's still there. I get they made a change at defensive coordinator, but again, I want to reiterate, I don't think Anarumo was the problem. Personnel-wise, they're not very good. Burrow was great. Chase great. Higgins was great. Could not have been better last season. Burrow was getting MVP discussion. Jamar Chase won the Triple Crown. Zilch won 9 games. 6 years ago, they would have been the second team out of the playoffs, along with the Denver Broncos. Obviously, it's now 7 teams per conference. Bengals couldn't even get in with that. So, listen, I get it. They're going to put up a lot of points. Listen, you better draft some Cincinnati Bengals, receivers. Obviously, Chase and Higgins, but they've got solid tight end play, like all of it. You better take those guys because they will win you a lot of games in fantasy football this year. They will be competitive. They will play in some of, I would guess, if by the end of the 2025 regular season, if you said, hey, take the top 10 most entertaining games of the year, I'd say the Bengals will be in 3 of them. Just on, and they'll probably win 1 because their defense can't get a stop to save their life because Lamar Jackson, every single time he plays those guys, just shreds them. I wouldn't be shocked if Aaron Rodgers has people fooled and like, hey, Aaron cooked the Bengals, because everybody does. And so, yeah, I do not believe in this team whatsoever. As a championship contender, I may pick them to make the playoffs. I'm iffy on it. If the Bengals defense has a pulse, and they don't have one if Trey Hendrickson's not there, just for the record. They better get Hendrickson on a deal and get him back out there. If they hadn't signed Higgins, it'd have been easier to do so, but whatever the case may be, I have not heard a take that I find convincing enough to why this team is going to be a championship contender. Listen, we know the Chiefs are, contrary to popular belief, I don't know why these folks are acting like the Chiefs are just dead in the water. They've made the AFC title game every year, the Mahomes era, but whatever. The Chargers lost Rashawn Slater, which is a big loss, but they still have a great defense. They still added, they still, Lam McConkey and Justin Herbert, and they've got a solid receiving core. Jim Harbaugh, I believe in. You could see them competing potentially. You could see teams like obviously the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills. I don't see it. Playoff team, maybe. They may even win a playoff game. Joe Burrow, historically, great in January. You just send the defense to back him up. I've said many times, it is very, very similar to the Drew Brees Saints, where Brees was throwing for 5,000 yards, and you had Marcus Colston, and then you had, I guess, Mike Thomas. That was when the Saints got good again. But like Jimmy Graham and putting up Mark Ingram, big numbers in the Superdome, and they're scoring, and they can't get a stop to save their lives. It wasn't until Brees got older that they were able to finally, improve the defense, draft better, Mickey Loomis, all of it. This is the New Orleans Saints with Drew Brees in about the mid-2010s. After they won a Super Bowl and had a couple playoff runs, the loss to San Francisco in 2011 in that classic game, the Vernon Davis play, and Brees was still in his peak, and they couldn't get a stop. That's what it feels like for Cincinnati right now, except in this case, they have way worse ownership and way cheaper ownership, and that's how the Bengals do business. So it's funny. I joked last a couple of months ago when the Shamar Stewart situation was going on before he finally signed his rookie deal. I said the Bengals and the Steelers have, if you put the Bengals offense with the Steelers defense, you've got a Super Bowl contender. But the Steelers spend way too much money on defense, and the Bengals spend too much money on offense. Now, I think you should spend, generally speaking, more money on offense, but that does not mean you should neglect the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I love Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley does not give two craps about defense. That's what it feels like for the Cincinnati Bengals right now. So that's where we are. Should be back. RJ Ochoa will be joining us in just a few minutes. We'll go to break for 1 minute once he's ready to go. But just looking at some of the preseason games, the Geno Smith getting flipped off thing in Seattle flipping the fans off was bizarre. Like, see, if you'd have told a Seahawks fan or showed the Seahawks fan the picture of Pete Carroll and Geno Smith running out in the field through the tunnel for a preseason game at Seattle in Raiders uniform and Raider gear, that'd be weird. What else we got? The Patriots destroyed the Commanders, return a kick for a touchdown. The Lions-Falcons had a very scary incident. Player got hurt. Reportedly, he's doing much better, so thank God. What else? Talked about the Browns, Panthers, Steelers, Jaguars. Listen, Mason Rudolph looked good. I have some Steelers fans kind of coming back at me saying like, you were ripping the offensive line. It's Jacksonville, guys. Like, this is not what the Steelers are going to be playing in the great pass rush with the Ravens and Myles Garrett with the Browns. And like, come on, if Trey Hendrickson's healthy, we know he's a real threat. We'll talk about Giants Bills. We'll talk about Jaxson Dart in about a half hour. Or rather than about 15 minutes or so. Vikings, Texans, J.J. McCarthy looked fine. I'm still not really a believer, but we'll see what happens with him. Rams, Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb got trucked by a ref on the sideline, and we'll talk to RJ obviously in a few minutes about the Cowboys. But Joe Milton, my guy, Bazooka Joe out of the University of Tennessee, uneven performance, 17-29, a touchdown, a pick. Had a pass rating of 68, 143 yards. Joe's two biggest problems. He doesn't see the field particularly well. That's why, despite the talent, he was a 6th-round pick by the Patriots last year. And the second thing with Joe Milton is his arm strength is, I want so bad to see a throw-off between him and Josh Allen. Because it's conventional wisdom. Josh Allen's the best arm in the NFL. Joe Milton could absolutely beat him in a throw-off. I just want to see it just for entertainment purposes. Maybe at the Pro Bowl someday. Just invite Joe Milton to do a competition with Josh Allen. The problem is he throws 100 miles an hour every single throw. He has no touch on these intermediate routes. I love the kid, but bro, back off just a little bit. Bucks beat the Titans. Cam Ward looked solid in his debut, number 1 overall pick. Jets crushed the Packers at Lambeau. Justin Fields with a solid performance, particularly on the ground, ran for a touchdown. How about Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? They lost the Cardinals, but Mahomes 1 for 1, 1 yard, 1 touchdown. Pretty good. Red zone possession, threw a little fade in the back right corner. Not bad. Broncos crushed the 49ers. Dolphins and Bears tied. I was surprised that Caleb Williams didn't play. That did catch me off guard. And then the Chargers beating the Saints to wrap up preseason week 1. Preseason week 2, I believe, begins on Friday. Titans, Falcons, and Chiefs, Seahawks, both of which will be on the NFL Network. Come back in 1 minute. RJ Ochoa should be ready to join us from Blogging the Boys. Be back just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Carving It Up. Appreciate everybody stopping by on this Monday. Joining us now is the editor-in-chief for the Dallas Cowboys, blogging the boys on SB Nation. He joined us about 11 months ago back in September after the Cowboys' Week 3 loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Shout out to him. We're bringing him on the show right now. It is RJ Ochoa who is joining us. RJ, how are you doing tonight, my man?
I'm doing well. I'm also a grad student at the University of Florida, so I just want to say that Tennessee is stupid and ugly and horrible in every single way. Just while I can offer that, I see a basketball behind you. If I could also ask for a reminder on who the national champions are.
Oh, don't do this. I already have a good friend of mine. Shout out to Tim Barnard, who's a big Florida fan. I don't need to double this up right now, RJ. I can't handle this right now, especially not here in August. We're here to talk Cowboys. So, again, 10 days ago, Micah Parsons asked for a trade out of Dallas, and that's been obviously the pervading storyline for the Cowboys. What are you hearing right now? What's the latest? Any sort of traction, any sort of progress on a potential deal with Micah?
I mean, it just kind of seems like everything is as it was when Micah authored the request, as it was before Micah authored the request. It just seems like this has been the same. This is kind of like the Breaking Bad Fly episode where like nothing really happened. You know what I mean? Like we're just kind of waiting for it to end and waiting for the next bit of development. Like we're so desperate for any kind of development one way or another. That's all we care about. It is insane how predictable this was and that we're still here in mid-August with it being the case.
And that's the part that I think is so fascinating about how Jerry Jones tends to handle these deals. Like, we know what happened with Dak Prescott last year. Like, I'm a big Dak guy. I was, as a Steelers fan, like crossing my fingers, man, he's going to be a free agent. Maybe the Steelers can go after him. And then literally the day of the Cowboys opening game against the Cleveland Browns, hours before, he signs it signs the long-term extension, biggest ever in the history of the NFL with Dallas. But we can go in, just for those that maybe have forgotten how good Micah Parsons is, we can go and put up the numbers. Tied for 5th in sacks and tackles for Lawson's entering the league, 2nd in pass rush grade, 2nd in win rates, and 1st in pressure rate, all according to Pro Football Focus. So obviously we know how productive this guy has been. Do you think this is similar to the Dak deal, to the CeeDee Lamb deal, in the sense that, okay, this is just Jerry dragging it out for storylines? Because I've sensed, and maybe I'm getting played again, but I've sensed a different tone in Jerry recently that, okay, there does seem to actually be a little bit of bad blood here that Micah led on, obviously, in that trade request.
I think where it's the same is in that the Cowboys have dragged it out to the 11th hour. We're not quite at the 11th, but the same in that sense. It's the same in that Micah is a star player for the team. Where I think it's different is I appreciate you being a Dak guy. I know we talked about that and you wanted him, and there were some people, the true ball knowers out there who know that Dak is great, but the reality of Dak is he's incredibly divisive for people, even for Cowboys fans. So, when that conversation was happening a year ago, there was a large, or at least a loud sector of people saying, don't do it, right? Like he sucks, he's terrible, whatever. Like, those people are out there. And even CeeDee, who didn't have that same divisiveness, held out. And so he wasn't in camp. So you had the people who, swear by the owners, who say he needs to be there, he needs to honor his contract, et cetera, et cetera. Micah, something I've said for the last few weeks is he began this whole process with the court of public opinion way more behind him than either Dak or CeeDee, for those exact reasons. And because if you did not know how the Cowboys go about this prior to Dak and CeeDee, that at the very least opened your eyes. So you had some wide open eyes entering this situation. So all of that is working in Micah's favor. He's also been very tactical about all this. He said back in December, I didn't personally believe him, not to call him a liar, that he didn't need to be the highest paid player, highest paid defensive player. He said that, I would assume, knowing that the Myles Garrett deal would get done and that Dallas would drag their feet and that maybe a TJ Watt deal would get done. And so now the numbers just kind of, speak for themselves. He's also been very vocal. He has a podcast. Granted, he hasn't done any episodes or anything, but he's not shy. Dak and or CeeDee could have made matters way more difficult for the Cowboys if they wanted to last year, but they didn't. And I don't mean to say that Micah's being a jerk or not playing nice. I don't want to cast that kind of, air over this, but he is, wielding some different power because that's just how he chooses to be. And unlike Dak or CeeDee, who had a higher approval rating, I think even the biggest Cowboys critic or hater or whatever acknowledges that Micah's the 3rd best defensive player in the NFL at worst. Maybe you think he's the 2nd or the 1st. So my point with all of this is Micah has this bright shining light on him and on the Joneses for being so silly about this whole process. That's where I think it's different. That's not to say that I think anything will ever change. But I do think he has exposed them in a different way. But that was ultimately possible because of Dak and CD, if that makes sense.
No, it does, because there was, as you said, there was already the expectation going in that this was going to get dragged out the way it did, with pass rushers like Crosby, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett getting paid. And I think what's interesting about the point you make is that, the fact that Micah exposed the fact that, Jerry was trying to negotiate with Micah without his agent, I think adds a whole different layer to it. And as you said, the court of public opinion is certainly behind Micah Parsons. So we'll see if this continues to play out. If there's no traction for a while, it certainly sounds like, based on what Jerry said recently, that he may not be in the field for the opening night game against Philadelphia. So we'll see if that continues to play out. One of the big storylines for Dallas this year, maybe the biggest other than Micah, is the fact that there's a new head coach, Brian Schottenheimer, who had taken 4 other offensive coordinator jobs, including in Dallas with Mike McCarthy, even if he didn't really call plays with Coach McCarthy. What are you seeing thus far? It feels like, from what I've heard out of Cowboys camp and reading about it, it feels like because he was with the Seahawks for 3 years with Pete Carroll as the OC, that he's trying to evoke some sort of like a Pete Carroll optimistic, energetic approach. Do you think that's translating to the team? I know there's been a lot of memes and people making fun of the Cowboys, like some of their team activities. But what do you think? What do you think is different from Schottenheimer than McCarthy, and maybe from other previous Cowboys coaches, like like a Jason Garrett or a Wade Phillips? Like, what are you seeing from Schottenheimer thus far?
I know when we spoke last, I gave, or at least tried to give, Mike McCarthy credit because people were so unwilling to do so. I mean, this is a team that won a lot of games in the regular season, albeit, and experienced high levels of offensive success when he was the offensive play caller. And people just want to act like that didn't happen because, like, 15 years ago, Mike McCarthy lost the PR battle to Aaron Rodgers, who we have also, no offense, learned is not necessarily the most trustworthy person when it comes to things like this.
No offense taken. Yeah, I know.
Right. And so, like, even still, Mike can't even get like a scrap of a piece of credit. But as it relates to Schottenheimer, I think important context is that the Cowboys dragged the McCarthy thing out, the departure from McCarthy. They obviously didn't make the playoffs. So the whole wild card week, it was, we're figuring out whatever. And it wasn't until the Monday after the Monday of wild card Monday night that they decided to move on. And they spent that first week, which was the divisional round week, interviewing different candidates, but they could not interview the candidates who belonged to the number 1 seeds in each respective conference, the Lions and the Chiefs coordinators, because they dragged it out. So they couldn't speak to Ben Johnson. They couldn't speak to Aaron Glenn, which is insanity when you really go back and think about it. But they spent the first week talking to Kellen Moore, Robert Saleh, Leslie Frazier. And it wasn't until after the divisional round was fully completed, the Monday after, that Brian Schottenheimer emerged, not because he was requested for an interview, but out of nowhere, in the blink of an eye, he was the odds-on favorite at all sorts of sports books. It was very curious and weird how that happened. And then after that, it was reported that he was going to formally interview, or even informally interview, with the team. And again, I think that context is necessary just to understand how we got here. Now, Brian Schottenheimer has a very unique past. He lost the Let Russ Cook PR battle, speaking of. And it's difficult to even find time where he called plays. The most notable from a successful standpoint is his time with the New York Jets, obviously in the early 2010s when they went to those 2 AFC championship games. And so it's hard to even kind of, when Mike McCarthy took over the play calling, we were able to go back to his days in Green Bay and say, this is what it's probably going to look like. You don't really have that data when it comes to Schottenheimer. But your instincts are absolutely correct. He has very much learned from Pete Carroll during his time with Seattle, and does have that youthful energy, that, just kind of intensity. And I think that he really had done an amazing job from the opening press conference up until the Micah stuff blowing up at training camp, of at the very least putting down the foundation for a culture. There were a lot of people who were starting to get sold. He's quite charming and charismatic when behind a microphone, and you can really kind of fall in love with the football cliche of who he is. And obviously he's an NFL legacy, and even if you hate the Cowboys, it's a cool story. But that being said, this Micah thing has just become this cloud that hangs over anything and everything the team does, and you feel for the guy. And their first preseason game didn't set anything on fire, and so that's now working against him. I would say that we're at a point now where he's starting to get a little bit challenged, where it's a matter of, well, why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? As it relates to the first preseason game, the Cowboys were the only team whose first round pick, who was healthy, I should say, didn't play. Tyler Booker didn't play in the first preseason game. And so, you know how that conversation goes. Patrick Mahomes plays, Joe Burrow plays. Why aren't you playing? Whatever. And fine, you want to keep Dak Prescott in a bubble? Okay, we can totally walk that walk with you. But why isn't Tyler Booker playing? And so those questions are starting to percolate, and we'll see how he handles them.
Yeah, and I think if you asked him privately, obviously off the record, I think he would not prefer the Cowboys. And we know, listen, with it being America's team, they're going to get a lot of nationally televised games, but he would probably prefer the first game not be opening Thursday night against the defending champs in Philadelphia. Like it's not ideal. But again, generally speaking, I do agree with you. I think he's handled things about as well as he could, in the sense that he hasn't made the Micah situation worse than it is in that sense. So, we'll see what happens with that. Someone I'm really fascinated about as a Steelers fan is George Pickens. So the Steelers moved George Pickens to the Cowboys. Dallas gave up some draft compensation. I've been for years saying on the show, man, could you get Dak a number 2 with CeeDee Lamb? It feels like every elite quarterback has a legit 2. And for as emotionally erratic as George Pickens can be, the kid is insanely talented. What do you think that could result in for him? Obviously, he's in a contract year. He's a free agent after this season. So do you think that opens it up more for CeeDee Lamb, maybe to have at least a comparable year to what he had in 2023 when he was healthy? And for Dak, do you think you see a little bit of a renaissance now that he has a legit 2 next to CD?
For the record, I was against the trade when it first happened. And not because I don't believe in George Pickens' ability, but because he was obviously somewhat annoying in Pittsburgh. And it wasn't even a matter of being perturbed by that. It was a matter of not trusting the Cowboys to be able to handle that, right? Like, somebody like the Eagles trades for that. And you give them the benefit of the doubt, right? The Cowboys simply don't have that. And, I think you mentioned he's in a contract year. It's also worth mentioning he's represented by David Mulugeta, who is the same agent who represents Micah Parsons, the powerful one the Cowboys are in this struggle with, whose name Jerry Jones claims to, or at least claimed at one point this offseason, to not know. And so my whole perspective on that was, okay, fine. I was against this. I'm here now. Let's talk about it. Extend him right away. What are you doing waiting? Like the plan is for this to work. The plan is for him to play so well that he will deserve a contract extension in the spring. So why not just get it done now? I equated it, and a lot of people have, to when Philadelphia did trade for A.J. Brown. The moment they gave that first-round pick to Tennessee, they gave him a deal. Why? Because, again, your plan is for everything to go according to that specific plan. And so I will say that the Cowboys, as it relates to Pickens and his annoyances or whatever, they've done an amazing job about that. And I think CD has done an amazing job. They have I think that's where CD has really kind of stepped up as a leader. And that was something the Cowboys wanted to see from him. That was the extension conversation last year. And obviously Dak Prescott is an amazing leader. I'm totally with you that Dak having a legitimate, a bona fide superstar opposite of CD is a great thing. This is probably the most potent, 1-2 pass catching combination he's ever had in his career. CD did play with Amari Cooper, but that was early in CD's career and a little bit before he had fully become CD Lamb. So you have to kind of go back maybe even to the final days of Des Bryant and Jason Witten in terms of this potent of a receiving duo from an overall pass catching standpoint. And so, yeah, it's really exciting. And Dak Prescott, as I'm sure you would agree, throws one of the better deep balls in the NFL. That's where George Pickens can really shine and really thrive. It's quite easy to kind of fall in love and let yourself get excited. It does, again, behoove you to get a contract extension done. But who am I to suggest such crazy and illogical things? To answer the, what would it look like for CD thing, I do think this is a matter of Pickens has to get production too. And there's only so much to go around. And so part of what made CD's 2023 so special from a numerical standpoint was that he was the only guy. I mean, it was CD Lamb and just some dudes. And so I think that Pickens eats into that. I think it is an AJ Brown, Devontae Smith sort of relationship where maybe CD has a down year or not necessarily a career best year, but it's because of George Pickens' presence, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely makes sense. And I think for, so much of the folks that have theorized whether or not George Pickens could work in Dallas stems back to the fact that Dak is, like you said, regardless of your opinion on Dak, is miles better than anybody he's had in Pittsburgh. And as you said, throws the deep ball. And I think it's a great opportunity for Pickens because Pittsburgh's offense last year, second half, was so much one-dimensional. It was moon ball or bust. And because Dak can throw, quote unquote, the moon ball, but he's also great in the intermediate routes, the slants, like all those different things. Pickens can really kind of show what he's worth as an overall route runner, which he did at times at Georgia. So I like that. Last question I would ask you is, it's so weird on Dallas. It feels like the kind of line of demarcation is the devastating loss to Green Bay at home, and everything's kind of come apart since then. What do you think? How do you think the Cowboys? I feel like the fan expectations have plummeted. Like, hey, we'll take 10 wins, 11 wins, make the playoffs. How do you think the Cowboys view this year? New head coach, the Micah stuff. We'll see if that gets done or not. But you do have a legit number 2 with Dak, as we've seen. Dak's healthy now. What do you think the Cowboys expect this year to be in terms of their end result?
Well, first of all, I'm really impressed. You have a really strong grip on the Cowboys because that is an important pivot point. Like if it were a book, I mean, that would be like the end of a chapter, and it would be like stage 4, whatever after that. And the context behind it is important. The Cowboys entered that wild card game as the 2 seed in the NFC. At the time, no 2 seed had ever lost to a 7 seed. Granted, there weren't a lot of opportunities for that to happen. They were undefeated at home. Seeded had that year. Dak finished second in MVP voting. And I should say that most fans, I don't mean to speak for a fan base, but had accepted, you know what? We're going to lose the NFC Championship game this year. But we're going to get there. We're going to get there. We're going to get that monkey off our back. So what? San Francisco will blast our doors off. It's okay. We'll get to the end. That was legitimately the perspective going into it. And it wasn't just that they lost. It was how they lost and that they lost so quickly. It was over, a quarter into the thing. And so to have to sit on that for an entire game effectively, it really did fracture people. And then that it was followed by keeping Mike McCarthy in a lame duck year, bringing Mike Zimmer back after having not been in football. Granted, he did well in 2024. Jerry Jones claiming to be all in, and then a particularly infamous offseason of inactivity that was headlined by bringing Zeke Elliott back. And then you get to the season, you've got the sun blaring through the stadium, you've got Jerry fighting with the radio host, you've got the literal stadium falling apart on Monday Night Football. Dak getting hurt, it just was as toxic as it could possibly be. And so to your point, I think that fans have developed a serious callous, right? No fan will ever check out. No fan will ever stop watching. No, it is a part of your culture if you're a football fan, right? It's just a part of your life this time of year. You do anything and everything leading up to watching your favorite team on Sunday. And if you're the Cowboys, it's a big deal because they're always on every channel ever. And so I think the Cowboys themselves, I think they expect to be in it, but I think they expect more than anything to be on Sunday Night Football all the time or being talked about at halftime of Monday Night Football or whatever. I have for a long time fought against the idea that the ownership isn't doing everything they can in the name of winning. But recent history has made it very difficult, if not impossible, to defend that claim, right? You look at the way they're handling Micah and the way they handle Dak and CD and the way that they just do a lot of different things as it relates to football. And it's very difficult to suggest that they are just scratching and clawing and looking under every rock to try to gain football competitive advantages. And that's been so underscored by sharing a division with the Eagles. You're talking about a team that just never sleeps, that is completely and totally relentless with regards to obtaining any and every advantage that they can. And so I think that people, who follow, you do have your homers and you got the We Dem Boys people no matter what, because whatever. But I think for the most part, people have accepted that, man, I really feel for Dak. I really feel for CD. I really feel for Schottenheimer because it's so difficult to win a Super Bowl, to get close to winning a Super Bowl if your team is trying. But when your front office, your ownership is handicapping things and just stirring the pot and making it more difficult for you, it's no wonder why they haven't done it in almost 3 decades now.
No question. I think, listen, Philadelphia's been well run for the majority of the Dak Prescott era, but now the fact that Washington has new ownership, we see what Jane Daniels, that adds a whole different level of pressure and scrutiny on Jerry Jones in particular. And I tend to agree with you. I think most have kind of accepted okay, Dak's not all the problem here. The coach, we've had different guys in here, different, defensive coordinators. There's one constant and it has been for the last 30 years. RJ Ochoa, where can people find your content, man? Because you do a great job.
blogontheboys.com and anywhere and everywhere you absorb any kind of social media, RJ Ochoa is the place. I did not mention it, but I have to as I leave. Brian Schottenheimer also is a Florida Gator, just so we're all on the record.
You just had to bookend it with some Florida Gator.
He's a national champion. He was on the 96 team. Back to Danny Werfel.
Oh, well, there you go. That's just the only you're one chomp away from getting banned for life from carving out. Just tell you right now, this cannot happen. RJ Ochoa, Blogging the Boys. Thanks for stopping by, my man. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me.
RJ, great stuff as always. Yeah, listen, I love that he sort of details the how Cowboys Nation has just absolutely, the expectations have just gone in the absolute gut. My guy, Patrick Brown, the show's not live, by the way, so unfortunately, if there's any comments, I cannot respond to them, but I'll obviously check them as the show's airing. I'm sure Patrick's in the comments saying, I've made peace as a Cowboys fan, and this is not going to play out the way that I would prefer it to do so. And I think that represents the majority of Cowboys fan base. It's frankly why I left the fan base 5 years ago now, because they're handling the Dak situation and it's just deteriorated from there. So fantastic stuff from RJ as always. Definitely appreciated him coming on the show. We'll be back in 1 minute on Carving Up Live to talk about another NFC East team, the New York Giants, and why you could see Jaxson Dart sooner than you think. Come back with that on Carving Up Live. welcome back to Carving It Up. So it's funny, again, this is why I say anytime that there's a pre-recorded show, if there's any news that is broken, I'm aware of it, just not the time you're watching me. This absolutely would have been a topic on the show if we were live at 6. And right now, I guess the show's, I guess we're getting up on 7 o'clock at the time everybody is watching the show, 7 o'clock Eastern. But the AP poll just came out. And I see that my Vols are 24th in the country, but they've got Texas. Here's the top 10 in the AP poll. Again, folks have probably seen it by now, but this is my first time reacting to it quickly. So they got Texas number 1, Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, Oregon, Alabama, LSU, Miami. I think Miami's kind of overrated. I'm not a buyer in the Hurricanes this year. I feel like they were more of a product of Cam Ward than people think. And I'm not a believer in Carson Beck whatsoever, even before the injury. Now he's coming off an arm injury. Like, I think it was the same situation that happened to Brock Purdy. Now, Purdy recovered and ended up playing relatively well, but I'm not a Carson Beck guy at all. Rounding out the top 25, it goes Arizona State, who RJ is a fan of. Illinois, who I'm think is a sleeper team to make the college football playoff. I kind of like them. South Carolina, who's real. Michigan, Florida. You heard the Florida love by RJ. SMU, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Indiana, Ole Miss, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Tennessee, and rounding up the top 25 is Boise State. So we are 2.5 weeks away from college football. 2.5 weeks, I think. I mean, if you count week 0, it's, next week Iowa State plays a game, I think. But 2.5 weeks from the official start of college football, and the week 1 slate. I mean, it could. The college football schedule makers, God bless y'all, man, because we've got like Syracuse, Tennessee. Like, I'm excited because it's Tennessee. It's an ACC team. It's at the games in Atlanta, I believe. But then obviously, maybe the biggest game of the college football season right off the bat, Texas, Ohio State. I think it says Ohio State's a 2.5-point favorite. Like that it doesn't get better than that. Like that could be a national championship preview for all we know, or at least a play. They did face off in the college football playoff semifinal a season ago. Bama, Florida. Bama's going to crush Florida State, but it's still 2 big brand schools. LSU, Clemson is the second biggest game. You got Notre Dame, Miami on Sunday night. Like, come on. Like it doesn't get better than this. So college football schedule makers, you have spoiled us. So shout out to that. But listen, I've got moderate expectations for my Vols this year. Certainly, I don't expect us to make the playoff the way we did last year. I'm going to talk about that more on the Vol View, which returns in 2.5 weeks, our first Friday show, which will be them. So very, very excited about that. But college football, ladies and gentlemen, we are on the doorstep. We're almost back. So very excited about that. Speaking of guys that were recently in college football, Jaxson Dart, who made his preseason debut with the New York Giants. Russell Wilson started the game, and thus far, Russell Wilson is QB1 of the Giants' depth chart. I don't anticipate that changing. I don't think Jameis Winston's going to make a run at the number 1 job. I think Winston probably either gets cut or dealt when it's all said and done in training camp. But Russell started, was fine. Jaxson Dart came in, looked pretty good. We can actually show you his numbers against the Buffalo Bills. 154 pass yards, a touchdown, no picks, completed 63% of his throws, not bad, and had a pass rating of 106. And as you see down there, he played in 4 drives. So pretty good stuff from Jaxson Dart. He moved well. He's got the arm strength. Again, I was more of a Jaxson Dart, not like a full-blown, I don't believe in the kid, but a skeptic. My thing was he played in a very NFL-ready offense under Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, and with NFL receivers, by the way, like Trey Harris, for example, and didn't always pop off the screen against good teams. The Alabamas, the world he struggled with. They beat Georgia. He played, I remember him playing relatively well against Georgia, but I think that was a rainy game. Beck didn't play well. He was struggled against Kentucky. He had a bad game against Florida. Like, really kind of a roller coaster guy. Now, that doesn't mean that's not death. I mean, Josh Allen was a roller coaster guy at Wyoming. Josh Allen was a roller coaster guy to varying degrees, really up until last year. Last year was his most consistent season. It's partly why Josh Allen won league MVP. We've seen guys, Sam Darnold, kind of be up and down, needed to finally end up in a system that worked for him in Minnesota. And I think that could be the situation with Jaxson Dart and the Giants. Listen, we know how talented Malik Neighbors is. That kid is just special. And again, the Giants letting Saquon Barkley go, obviously, looking back, was insanity. But the defensive line, led by Dexter Lawrence, is awesome. They have Abdul Carter, who I thought was the best player in the draft last year. I thought it was close between him and Travis Hunter. I thought Abdul Carter was the best player in the draft. Think he's going to be special. The problem, though, for the Giants, Joe Schoen is obviously in the hot seat, the general manager, if nothing else, than for paying Daniel Jones $40 million a year and then letting Saquon Barkley go. But fair or unfair, and I personally really like him as a coach, Brian Dable what he helped do with Josh Allen in the Buffalo. He got Daniel Jones to the playoffs, for crying out loud, and won a playoff game against a Kevin O'Connell coach team at Minnesota, which is a very real home field advantage at US Bank. 9-7-1 the first year. Okay, we won a playoff game. Maybe Daniel Jones gets hurt the next year. We go 6-11. The next year, 3-14. They were going to get the number one pick until they beat the Indianapolis Colts late in the season. So Giants have not had a lot of success as of late. Like 2022 in the last decade plus, kind of an outlier. And so Dable's on the hot seat. Russell Wilson, especially if you look at the Giants' early season schedule, man, it is the whole schedule in general is a murderer's row. If I can pull this up here on my phone. Okay, so Giants open the season at Washington. Yikes. They go to Dallas, who RJ and I detailed the many issues of the Cowboys, but Dak's certainly better than Russell Wilson. The Cowboys have an overall better roster, at least on the offensive side of the ball than the Giants. I don't know about defensively, certainly with no Micah Parsons, but the Cowboys should win that game. Then they play Kansas City. Yikes. Then they play the Chargers. That doesn't sound too good. Like the Giants' best case scenario are looking at a 1-3 start before they go to New Orleans to play, I think, one of the worst teams in football, the Saints. And then they turn around and play Philadelphia. And then they go to Denver. Then they go to Philadelphia again. Then they get the 49ers. Like you could be looking at a Giants team that's 2-8 in their first 10 games, and Dable is probably gone by that point. So Brian Dable's looking at like, okay, it's somewhat similar to Cleveland with Joe Flacco. Russell's not as old as Joe Flacco, and still, even at this advanced age and stage of his career, does move better than Joe Flacco, does still throw the deep ball well. We saw that in Pittsburgh last year. Russ is stable. Russ is a good bridge guy. I need to get this kid on the field because I think he has potential. We wouldn't have drafted him if we didn't think he had that. I got Daniel Jones to the playoffs. I need to save my job. Because I'm 18-32-1, I believe is the record as the head coach of the New York Giants. Like we've got to get some momentum as an organization, and Jaxson Dart gives us a higher ceiling to do that. And so again, you like what you saw from him against Buffalo. I think we'll see him continue to get more action in the preseason. Him and Shedeur, to me, are the two most fascinating rookie quarterbacks of this preseason because, in large part, there's some hot seats really with the Giants, and even certainly to a degree in Cleveland, and with the Browns having 2 first-round picks makes it even more fascinating there with Shedeur. But again, I understood. I would not have taken Jaxson Dart ahead of Shedeur Sanders, but I understood it. Everyone else beyond that, I mean, I know Tyler Shough was fine yesterday for the Saints, but Tyler Shough, Jalen Milroe, Dylan Gabriel, like how on earth are these guys going ahead of Shedeur Sanders? And so, but the kid has talent. I mean, listen, he's Anakin Skywalker. He looks like him. He's got the scar. Like, if nothing else, I'm a fan of Jaxson Dart because he's a Star Wars fan, and we'll always rock with those. So, but again, he played in a very NFL-ready offense at Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin and was kind of a roller coaster. But Dable's a smart offensive coach, helped get Josh Allen on the right track to do what he's continued to do since then, and got Daniel Jones to the playoffs. Like, Dable can coach. If he gets fired by the Giants, he will be one of the most sought-after head coaches in the market. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And so a lot of it has just been bad moves by Joe Schoen in the front office, paying Daniel Jones, letting Saquon walk. But they've drafted well in the defensive line. Like they're as talented defensive line as there is in the NFL, probably top 5, to be honest. They've got Malik Neighbors. Like, they've drafted moderately well. They just obviously haven't had the difference maker at the quarterback position since Eli Manning led them to a Super Bowl in 2011. It's been that long. I mean, and they had the 2016 playoff year, but that was when Odell and the receivers went in the vote in Miami, and then they got smoked in Green Bay. Like that was an ending to a season Giants fans would like to forget. Before we move on to our last topic of the night, I did want to give a lot of love to A'ja Wilson. Let's go and put up her stat line from last night for the Vegas Aces. 32 points, 20 rebounds, 5 assists, was 13-25 for the field, also chipped in 2 steals. The first 30-20 game in the history of the WNBA. So big shout out A'ja Wilson. She's the best player in the WNBA. Collier certainly has a case, and Caitlin Clark, when healthy, is in that top 5 category. But A'ja is absolutely balling out for an Aces team that has had a lot of turmoil the last couple of off seasons, losing major pieces like Kelsey Plum in particular. So who's with, the Los Angeles Sparks now. So shout out A'ja Wilson, still the best player in the WNBA and continues to make history. And by the way, is part of like the basketball power couple, her and Bam Adebayo. Like, man, like that is, by the way, better scorer than her boyfriend as well. Shout out to Bam. Bam's got a good mid-range. Bam can score in the interior. But listen, A'ja is as dominant a player as we've seen in some time in the WNBA, and as accomplished player, certainly multiple-time MVP, champion, the whole bit. So Vegas Aces are lucky to have her. If they didn't have her, they'd be toast. So she's kind of carrying them this year. Last topic of the night. I appreciate everybody stopping by. Shout out to RJ Ochoa for stopping by the show. He, was fantastic, and hopefully we can get him on the show again in the future. I did want to commemorate something because yesterday was the 1-year anniversary, and oh, how I wish YouTube's copyright rules weren't what they were, and I could show the last 2 minutes of the USA gold medal game against France in men's basketball. But a year ago yesterday, you might be wondering why I'm wearing this jersey, the number 4 Team USA jersey. Well, number 4 is Steph's Team USA jersey because he balled out against France last year. 24 points, 5 rebounds, 2 steals. Man went 8 for 13 from 3, which is crazy. He had one night to boot. Scored 12 points in the final 2:48 of that game against France. And then in general, it's what's amazing last year about that Team USA team. And what makes them, to me, the greatest Olympic team ever, exceeding the Dream Team. They played significantly better competition. I think the Dream Team may have played something like 7 to 9 NBA players total. Whereas you look at Serbia, look at Canada, France, loaded with NBA players. Like the talent was significantly greater than that of what the Dream Team played in 1992. And the fact that Magic had retired, Bird was shot by that point. They had Christian Laettner on that team. Like, listen, Jordan, Barkley, like they had some awesome players on Team USA. David Robinson, but John Stockton. But compared to even the Team USA team now, or last year at least, Braun, not in his prime, was still the most outstanding player of the Olympics. I think it should have went to Steph. But Braun had a triple-double against Serbia. KD hit some big shots. Steph was marvelous in the last 2 games. As a matter of fact, we can show you what Steph did. And just, again, to commemorate what he did a year ago against Serbia and France, to hold off the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic in Serbia, and then to knock off France. In those 2 games, Mr. Curry dropped 60 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. He shot 60% from the field. 65% from 3. And in a game where they beat Serbia by 4 and France by 11, Steph Curry was a plus 40 when he was on the floor for Team USA. So just to sort of, my recap a year post that is, and I maintain what I said a year ago, and he doesn't get enough credit for it, because I'm doing, folks not know this, a little bit of a teaser. I'm working on a little bit of a project, won't divulge into the specifics of it, beyond this what I'm about to tell you, but looking at all of NBA history. And obviously, Steph Curry is a major part of NBA history. And I already knew this a year ago because I've watched Steph since 2013 as a Warriors fan. But he is, and I don't think he gets enough credit for this, he's one of the greatest big game players in the history of the league. When you look at what he's done in Game 7, I think I read a stat the other day. He's the only player in history to have 4 double-digit scoring fourth quarters in a Game 7. Like Steph Curry's done. He's the only player that's ever done that. So, again, 2016 Cavs, we get it. That's the low point of his career. You will not find an NBA player in the history of the league outside of maybe Michael, and even 95 against Orlando is kind of a low point, and Kareem, and there's some low points in the 70s where he missed the playoffs. Every single superstar in the history of the NBA has a low point, oh, God, that was ugly. Braun in 2011, Magic in the 84 finals, Michael Jordan in 95 against Orlando, Steph in 2016 against the Cavs. Like, Shaq got swept a million times. You get just up and down the list. I mean, I guess Bill Russell probably does have a low point with him, career-wise, with him winning 11 championships. But everybody's got it in the modern era. Outside of that, Steph's been awesome in Game 7. I think he's like second all-time, if I remember correctly, in terms of scoring in Game 7s. Obviously, we think about the 4 championships in Golden State. We think about the fact that he is one of the greatest scorers of all time in closeout finals games. Averages over 30 a game in closeout games in the finals. I mean, listen, to this day, it's still, I think looking back, and you could certainly make a case for Kevin Durant in 2018. KD was a runaway finals MVP 2017. There's no question. Steph was great. KD was better. I strongly, to my bones, believe Steph should have been finals MVP in 2018. He outscored KD in 3 of the 4 finals games. He closed the finals with a 37-point, scoring game against the Cavs. He had a game 2 where he hit 9 threes, which is a finals record. He had a big shot in game 1. Like, I thought he was better than KD in the 2018 finals, dealing with more defensive attention, by the way. It enrages me to this day, and how so much perception becomes reality, that NBA history, the general look on it, the general consensus on the 2015 finals is, Steph was good, but man, Iggy shut LeBron down. Bron almost averaged a 33, 34-point triple-double in that series. And Iggy was really good. Iggy was huge. And Andre Iguodala, we got his book back here. Let me tilt the camera a little bit. See Andre Iguodala, his book. I love Iggy. He was good in that series. But Steph averaged more points in the finals than he did in the regular season when he won regular season MVP. In a 2-2 finals, dropped 37 to put the Warriors up 3-2 before they could win on to close it out in Cleveland to win the championship. Like, again, this all goes back to a point I made last year when Steph led Team USA to gold. Was unreal. Had the greatest game any Team USA players ever had in the game against Serbia, and had the greatest 2-minute stretch in the history of men's Olympic basketball against France to win the gold medal. Is that this, and I feel like it's died out as of late, this whole, oh man, Steph, can't trust him in the big games, because that Game 7 was so devastating, losing the 3-1 lead to Cleveland, and it's the low point of Steph's career. Mike, okay, I think we're back. Sorry about that. I was unplugged the mic for a second there. What I was going to say though is it's the low point of Steph's career. It's also the outlier of Steph's career. Like that's not who he is and what he does in the biggest moments. So just wanted to quickly pay tribute to the greatest shooter of all time, one of the 6 greatest players in the history of the game, Wardell Stephen Curry II. Because if not for him, Team USA probably does not win gold last year. Actually, matter of fact, they don't win gold last year because they would not have beaten Serbia to get to the gold medal game against France, where Steph had, again, the greatest 2-minute shooting stretch in the history of men's Olympic basketball. And with that, that's all the time for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by, as always. Be sure to catch Carving It Up live. We'll be back live on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube and on Twitter. My man, Anthony Salas, he works for ESPN, worked on a new documentary called The Kingdom. We'll actually go ahead and we'll promote this a little bit. ESPN original docuseries, 6-part series, The Kingdom, which premieres on Thursday on ESPN Plus and Disney Plus, and by the way, airs the first 2 episodes on ESPN at 9 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. At 9 p.m. and then 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN. Anthony's going to be joining me on the show on Wednesday to talk about that documentary, to talk about following the Chiefs last year. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned for that. Another big thank you to RJ Ochoa, Blogging the Boys. Subscribe to all of his content on social media, all of his pieces on SB Nation. He does a fantastic job. Great dude. Great information that he gave us for 15 plus minutes on the show. So shout out to him. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to stay safe out there. Subscribe to the Grid Network, GRYD Grid. The Grid Podcast Network. Hit the subscribe button there. Subscribe to Carving Up Live, where we are coming out with content each and every day. So stay tuned for that. Hit the notification bell. Get notified every single time we upload something new. TikTok, Instagram, X, the whole bit. I'm everywhere. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Anthony Salas from ESPN will be joining me. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. And long live Curry. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.